Hello and welcome to another video. Today we have a video about learning new champions. So I want to present you a general blueprint for how I would approach learning a new champion. And since I've learned probably like 40 or 50 champs at this point, at some point or another, I think I have a pretty good idea at least of how to do that. So yeah, let's get right into it, right? I have some key points, but they're not all of them. So for example, there's also like some archetype stuff. So, okay. Let's just go down this list now. So for builds and their roles, that's very simple, right? You just go on a stat side, you just look up the build. Okay, cool. That can work fine for a starting position. And then the roles, as in like what the role of the build is. For this, you're going to have to look at the players who actually play these champs, and you're going to find some patterns, right? Why they play some stuff, why they don't play some stuff. But then, okay, if we move on, we have basic champion spells, mechanics, tricks, clears. Like this stuff is really simple to learn. Like this, an example is my Elise guy. Like I just give you like the basic tricks, right? So like, okay, W and then Q in spider form, W for vision, and then like W on clearing jungle camps, and then there's the ranged auto attack thing, and then there's like moving your spiderlings and whatever else, right? Like these are random tricks that you just have on your champions, and you just learn these so that you apply them. You learn them early on so that they actually become a part of your game plan. You don't have to force them in later. Clears, managing waves, as in like actually managing to last hit the waves and hitting them on their tower and whatever. So that stuff is pretty good to learn right now. So for this stuff, you just play like a few games, you look at the champ, and you're chilling. Okay, but after I play a few games and I learn a few simple things, what do, right? Now the question is, how do I play the early, mid, and late game, right? And we are going to go in this order specifically. So I want a general game plan for every single stage of the game. So early game, I will figure out what my champion generally wants to do. Is my champion Elise? So I want to 3-camp invader gank. Is my champion Evelyn? So I generally want to full clear. Is my champion Orianna? So I want to generally slow push, drop pressure, and bully the enemy. Like what kind of champion am I playing, right? Then in mid game, same thing. After I figure out what my early game role is, I figure out what my mid game role is. Okay, is my champion a skirmisher that wants to like fight a bit, like Elise or make picks or whatever? Is my champion a champ that wants to be set up to get free kills and then maybe make picks like Evelyn? Is my champion something like Orianna that wants to maybe like cut some side waves, rotate to fights, participate in fights, control big zones on the map with her ball and ult and whatever? Or what kind of a champion am I? If I also give you some other examples for the other stuff for Orianna, so her builds, for example, we had the double Dorans before, her role, so she is a control mage that can also bully, she can do a lot of damage, or she can play supportive. Then basic champion spells, I'm not gonna go over her spells, that's like too much effort. Mechanics and tricks though, I will say, okay, so her general mechanics and tricks are, so for mechanics, you would say something like positioning her ball well, knowing when to reset her E with actually using the spell or walking out of range, and so on. And for some tricks, you would have like, okay, I proc phase rush with QE out, I proc phase rush with QWE if I place the ball behind the enemy, and so on. How do I clear the waves? Okay, so usually you're going to want to use 2 Qs to clear a wave as Orianna, because if you use W or E or whatever, you're going to run out of mana pretty fast. That's like an example, but at the moment the build is with Seraphs, so you probably won't run out of mana, so you won't find that issue. But it is something that does exist. And then, okay, how do I play early game? As I said, if I can, then I want to slow push, and I want to bully, and I want to draw pressure to mid. Mid game, as I said, right? And then late game, it would just be like full control team fights, right? So that's like a champion specific example. And for late game, you just figure it out. But the thing that I want to talk about is the bonus tip here, where playing differently early and mid game, or thinking that if you die like randomly it's somehow different than dying right before an objective. It's not really different because you die in the same ways. You play the game in like the same way, kind of like the logic doesn't change. Just because you went from early game to mid game, it doesn't really change. That sometimes you can slow push, sometimes you can freeze, sometimes you can do other stuff, right? Like people avoid freezing because enemy then does something else, and in solo queue ends up pretty badly. And I see that argument that in solo queue freezing can end up really badly. That's fair. That's why I also don't recommend people freeze in solo queue, because it just ends in disaster oftentimes. But slow pushing doesn't really end in so big disasters, and in mid game and late game, what people do is they just kill the wave on spawn. But why can't you kill the wave by slow pushing it? There isn't much of a reason why. Like, if there's not much to contest right now and enemy isn't contesting, and there is no objective up, then what is stopping me from just building up a few waves and then crashing rather than instantly just one-shotting the wave? You don't one-shot the wave when you're laning, so why is mid and late game different? Obviously, there are some nuances where, oh, well, maybe I need to move around the map and do some stuff. Okay, cool, that's fine. But there's still a time and a place for stuff to be done, which people are just not looking at, because why would they, I guess. Then the general game plan for my champion is something like this, but with this point I also meant more in detail. I want you to go in a lot of detail on levels 1 to 6, right? So it's really important to hammer these levels down, because what you do from level 6 onwards, it's important of course, but it's possible to wing it a bit more than in the complete early levels. So I'll give you the 3 examples that I used in this video. So Evelynn, Elise, and Orianna. So as Evelynn, my general plan is that I will full clear, but okay, well, maybe I have to like do 3 camps in the gank. Maybe I have to like avoid an invade or something, you know? As Elise, okay, my general plan is I will 3 camp and gank or invade, but if there's nothing there, then I'm just gonna do like 4th camp, 5th camp, like what can I do, right? I don't know. I mean, obviously there's also diving, but if you really can't do anything, then maybe there's something else, right? Like, for example, in the Elise guide, I think we watched the Chinese guy, and he didn't have a play at 3 camps, so he just did 1 more camp, and then he did the play, right? So there's some adaptation to be done in those things, but you need to have a general game plan to adapt from it, because you need to have a baseline, right? So a baseline makes you more consistent, and then you can add details onto that base plan. That's like the important thing, because if you have no base plan, then you're basically painting a whole picture every single time. So then you have to ask yourself, what is my role in the game, right? So how can I win games? So as Evelynn, I give damage, right? I give damage to my team. I give pressure with my passive from Invis. Okay, so I need to make sure those 2 things are maximized. As Elise, what is my role in the game? I can dive really well, I can gank really well, I can skirmish really well, so I should play around those things, right? And as Orianna, what am I really good at? I'm really good at controlling zones, I'm really good at bursting squishies or something, I'm really good at supporting like bruisers or ADCs or whatever. I give them a lot of armor, MR, double E movement speed, so there's also the option of putting points into E on Orianna, so that I give a lot more resistances, right? And then finally, you want to think about, how do I win or lose games? Because this is the big question here. So what wins me a game on my specific champion, right? Like on Evelynn, the way that I win a game is I make picks, right? Mostly. Or I win a big fight. So with Evelynn, it's all going to be very objective focused, very fight focused, very picks focused. I'm not going to split push on Evelynn because her kit is just not good at it. And then I'm not gonna like, I don't know, do some other random thing. I don't know. I don't even know. I can't even think of it. But on Elise, okay, picks again really good. Skirmish is better than full-on team fights though. And it's like, okay, well, on both of these champions, I can also just go to side lanes and rotate there, and and help my teammates in that way, right? But then if we take a different type of champion, which is Orianna, then, okay, well, how do I win on Orianna? Okay, well, now I can side lane, right? So now side laning is an option. I can side lane. And if I'm stronger than the enemy, then I can maybe kill them. I can out-rotate them. I can push them in and rotate to my team. I can show up to fights first. I can just have more impact in fights. Whatever, right? So you want to figure this stuff out. And then when you figured all of this stuff out, then what ends up happening is that you realize that you're going to be pretty decent at a champ at that point, because you have the general idea of what you want to do levels 1 to 6. Okay, that's great. And then you have a general idea of what you want to do early game, mid game, and late game. What is your purpose? And then you have a general idea of how you can win a game. And then you have a general idea of what your champion does and whatever. And if you have all of these general ideas, then you're chilling, right? Like at that point, you're fine. So these are the things that you want to learn to pick up a new champion. But in general, what it's going to end up coming down to is that you need to look for these tricks, right? Like what these people do, and you need to break it down into as small bits and pieces as possible yet again. Because the smaller it is, the more digestible it is going to be. It's like food. You're not going to swallow the whole pizza down. You're just gonna take one bite. And then swallow that, and then the next bite, and whatever. So I'll just look quickly if there's something else we could add on to this. No, not really. But I'll say that I recommend very strongly that what you do is you first look at level 1s, then you look at level 2s, then you look at level 3s, and so on. You should just go in order, because it's going to make the game make a lot more sense than if you go in any kind of other order. Like if you work on level 4s first, or if you work on all-ins first, or if you work... Like, no, just work on the first step of the game first, right? Because imagine you're building a house, right? And let's say that this is like your level 1, 2, 3, right? And then this is like your level 4, and this is like your level 5. Then here is like your level 6 and whatever else, right? And let's just say that the house is bigger, but okay, let's just say it's like this. If I remove any one of these pieces, like this is gonna be a bit shaky, right? And the issue is also if I mess up my level 1, right? My level 1 leads into my level 2. So in reality, what you would end up seeing is something like, I don't know, like you would see this as level 1, right? Like in a proper game, it's like level 1. And then you would have like a level 2. But if I remove my level 1, then how do I play? Like the level 2 will just fall through, and I won't have a proper level 2. I will have a level 2 that's basically a level 1, but it's just horrible. So that's why you have to work on the first possible level first and the start of the game, and then work your way up to the next ones. Because if you didn't work on the first part of the game, then the rest of the game is messed up and you can't actually fix it properly, because you're fixing an already flawed game. Okay, well, I tried to use more examples this time and tried a bit of a different format. So if you found this helpful, then like and subscribe and comment, I don't know. And if you didn't, then let me know which parts were unclear to you or what could have been better or whatever. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. See ya.